Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum and I'm here today at Morphy's with a very cool 4-barreled custom rifle made in Ashtabula, Ohio in probably the early 1850s. This is, I think, just a really neat example of the sort of firearms that were accessible, available, being manufactured, but by no means normal or standard. It is a mule ear style of system with, again, 4 barrels, all in one giant cluster. Now, this was manufactured by a gunsmith named P.E. Hall, I believe that was Perry E. Hall, in the city of Ashtabula, Ohio. The only things we know about Hall from some old records of American gunmakers is that he worked in Ashtabula from 1848 until 1854 making percussion rifles. And in particular made target rifles. This guy was not a simple journeyman gunsmith. He was clearly pretty darn good at his trade. I've seen some other examples of his work. They're nice rifles, and this is not a beginner sort of gun, although it doesn't look great right now. It's in rough shape today, being now 175 years old. Let's take a closer look at it. Let me show you what a mule ear is and how this thing works. Now, we know this was made by P.E. Hall because he very thoughtfully stamped his name on it in several places. There it is on top of the barrel, as well as his home base of Ashtabula, Ohio. And then he also marked it on both of the lock plates. So there's the left one, and there's the right one. Interestingly, it is marked upside down on the right-hand one. We can take a look at the muzzle there. You got your 4 .36 caliber rifled barrels, so not a musket. These are all 4 rifled barrels. Barrel length is 24 inches for all of them. And then there's what this thing looks like around the action. So this is called a mule ear because of this, which is the hammer, essentially, and you've got 2 of them on each side. So in order to run this, you would cock the hammer back, put a percussion cap on there. You've got 4 percussion caps, 1 for each barrel, top and bottom, left and right, which line up with top and bottom, left and right barrels, of course. And then this has a double set trigger. So normally you could pull the rear trigger to drop the hammer, or you could, and that would give you sort of like a typical normal trigger pull, or you could pull the front trigger, which is the set trigger. You pull this with a fair amount of force and it will come back and sort of click, and then you have essentially a classical style of hair trigger on the rear to give you a very light trigger pull for a very precise shot. Now this is unfortunately not functional right now, so in order to drop that hammer, I actually have to pull off the side plate, which is fine because that means I can show you inside of it. Also, before we do, let me just point out 2 little additions here. These are little protective shields. Folks typically didn't wear eye protection in the 1850s when they were shooting, and these 2 things are there to prevent bits of powder and potentially bits of percussion cap from coming back into the shooter's eye when he fires. All right, let's go ahead and take the side plate off and just remove this screw. There we go. I can remove this guy, and that screw holds the other side in as well. So that is the trigger. And you can see when I pull the trigger, it's just going to pull this lever forward. And if we look at the inside of the lock, you have 2 springs here that are connected to sears down in there. I'm going to hold on to this so it doesn't snap, but if I pull this back, it's going to lift up out of sear engagement and allow that hammer to fall where it would then hit a percussion cap sitting on one of these nipples. If we take a closer look at that, you can see as I'm lifting this, right in there is the little sear notch. Click, and that locks it in place. One of the interesting, not so great design features of this particular rifle, something you would definitely want to know about before you start using it, is that you can only cock 1 hammer on each side at a time, because if I go to cock this side, it actually pushes that sear out and drops the other hammer. So you cannot have both, well, you can have both of these cocked at the same time, but only if you do it simultaneously. If you have one cocked and try to cock the other, it'll drop the first one, which if you've got a percussion cap on it would be an unpleasant surprise. Anyway, if you have them both cocked and you pull the trigger, you are going to fire both of them at the same time. By the way, these two springs are both connected by these little links to the hammer piece itself. So as the hammer goes up, it's going to bend this flat spring in towards the lock plate that way. And we've got a second one here that is just a mirror image of the first. Kind of like how we know this was made by Hall, we know this was owned by Major Smith of the 5th Ohio Cavalry because he, again, thoughtfully engraved his name on the patch box here. So that allows it to be traced a bit. This doesn't seem to have been done at the same time as the rest of the gun. Maybe Smith acquired this rifle after the Civil War. We really don't have any way of knowing. But we do know that it was manufactured in Ashtabula between almost certainly 1848 and 1854. All right, if we go ahead and take a look down the rest of the gun, you'll see there's a little bit of engraving up at the muzzle. We have a brass or bronze front sight that is dovetailed in place, and unfortunately the front sight post has broken off of it. There's a very simple ramrod down there. It's held in place with got a guide for it there, and then it drops into the stock here. The barrel cluster is octagonal, pretty popular style at the time. Half stock. This is a cross bar that locks the stock into the barrel. This was a pattern that was common before the use of wraparound barrel bands, and I think some people just prefer it aesthetically because it doesn't have anything wrapping over the barrel itself. This had a buckhorn style of rear sight, like so. Brass trigger guard. Unfortunately, there's some damage and repair down here to the stock, but brass trigger guard with sort of a bit of a pistol grip to it. The double set trigger that we took a look at. Very long rear tang to the action. There's another pair of old stock repairs right here. You can see the change in wood pattern right there, and that's on both sides actually. So something got repaired there. And then a very sharply curved and relatively small butt plate to the gun. Like, whoever was shooting this was not a large person, or they just enjoyed having the points of the stock dig into their shoulder. And a little bit of engraving on the top of the butt plate back there. Here at Morphy's, this thing actually has a whole bunch of research on Major Smith with it, talking about his service in the Civil War, although nowhere in any of that documentation do they mention this particular gun. This is a cool gun, but this is a hunting gun probably. This really isn't a suitable combat weapon, and I'm sure that Major Smith probably did not take it into the Civil War with him. It probably stayed at home. So a very cool example of American mid-1800s custom gunsmithing work. Big thanks to Morphy's for giving me access to this to show to you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.